Hey friends, welcome back to the Do Cool Shit podcast. It's me, Meryl, and I'm here solo today. I don't know if you know this, but I've been coaching for 12 or 13 years. I've honestly lost count at this point. And one of the biggest quote unquote problems that people report having involves follow through. I've actually heard people say things like, I have a follow through problem. I've had this conversation with people multiple times in the last week. When people try to combat it, they say things like, I just need to be more disciplined. I need to get my shit together. I just need to be more consistent. I hear people say things like this weekly, either within Wicked Iron Strength and the people that I work with, or just people out in the wilds when they're talking about their lack of follow through. And yeah, it feels true because on the surface level, it looks like a follow through problem. But the reality here is that most people don't have a discipline problem. And a lot of the people that I talk to, I'm like, that is not it, my friends. What they do have is a gap. There's a gap between what they intend to do and actually doing it. There is a gap between the behavior that they intend to do and then actually doing it. In psychology, this is known as the intention behavior gap. And this is what's happening in here. If this is you, you know what to do. You know you want to work out and that working out is, beneficial and supportive. You know you want to eat better. You know that that is beneficial and supportive. You know you want to show up differently. And you may even know certain ways in how you want to do that. But knowing isn't translating into doing. Again, the space between there is known as the intention behavior gap. And this is where people get stuck. They try to close that gap with things like, I just need to try harder. I need to stop being lazy. I need to get it together. Or they say things like, why can't I just do it? They add more pressure, more guilt, more self criticism. And maybe that even works for a few days or some time, but it's not something that is sustainable. It's not something that gets people to actually create change long term because you're not actually solving the gap or bridging it. You're just trying to bully your way across it. So let's talk about that phrase. I just need more discipline and why it doesn't work. And I want to call this out directly. When someone says this, what they're really doing here is they're oversimplifying a pretty complex problem, if we want to call it a problem. Because if it was just discipline, you would have solved it already. If you're listening to this, I can guess you're not someone um who can't follow through. You follow through in other areas of your life when it comes to work, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to various other responsibilities like things for your kids or events for friends, going to church or temple or, other religious services, going to your nail or hair or doctor's appointments. So, why does it kind of feel like it falls apart here? Because follow through isn't just about willpower, it is about alignment and skills and capacity. So let's go over some of the reasons why people fall into that gap and what's actually missing. There are usually multiple layers here, and this is where the gap gets created. So there may be missing knowledge where there's lack of clarity. You think you know what to do, but you don't fully know. There's, just some missing pieces, and that's not something to feel bad about. You only know what you know, right? Or maybe you have conflicting information or overcomplicated plans or no clear next step. So naturally, if that's there, you're going to hesitate. You're going to overthink. You're going to stall. And it's not because you're lazy, it's because your brain just doesn't have a clear, simple path forward. You may have missing tools or execution, quote unquote, problems where even if you know what to do, you might not have the tools to actually do it consistently. And these tools may be things like how to adjust when your schedule changes, what to do when that surface layer motivation dips, how to navigate stress eating, how to pivot instead of quit. Very often, this is where people fall into that all or nothing or the black and white, whether they know it or not, because without the actual tools, the moment things aren't perfect or expected or as planned, everything falls apart. There may be missing perspective. This is within mindset and identity. And this one is huge. If expectations look like, I should always want to do this, I shouldn't struggle anymore, if I fall off, I failed, then every normal human experience is going to feel like a problem. So instead of adjusting, learning, continuing, people spiral, they stop, they start over again. And this is not a discipline issue. This is a relationship with the process issue at play. Immediate gratification may be the thing that is winning. The things that move you forward often don't feel good in the moment. And they definitely tend to not feel as good in the moment as the alternatives. Going to the gym doesn't feel as appealing as scrolling on your phone and laying on the couch, especially when you're tired. At the end of a hard day, cooking definitely doesn't feel as appealing as ordering takeout or, cooking and eating some chicken doesn't sound as good or taste as good maybe as pizza. Avoiding feels far better than addressing in the moment. So in real time, your brain chooses what feels easier or more comfortable. And it's not because you don't care, it's because you may just not have built the systems that help you act in alignment when comfort is pulling you in the other way. Comfort or even familiarity is pulling you in the other way. Very, very likely there's insufficient planning and the I will figure it out trap. This happens so often for people. And a lot of people that I work with because they're problem solvers and they're very solution oriented and they do it in other areas of their life pretty well. And to caveat here, it's probably because they have tools and systems and all the things that are lacking in these areas. A lot of people have intentions and good intentions and know the things, but then there's no actual plan. There's no when, no where, no how. So it turns into, I'll just work out later. I'll eat better tomorrow. Or again, I'll figure it out. And later doesn't tend to become real. Vague plans don't support you or hold up in real life. And this is where a lot of people tend to feel like they're kind of just like flying by the seat of their pants, and it feels chaotic, and they're feeling like they have to play catch up, and maybe a week starts out strong and then doesn't end so great, and hopefully next week will be better. There may be cognitive and or emotional barriers, things like fear of failure, fear of doing it wrong, perfectionism, again, all or nothing thinking. So instead of starting really freaking messy or adjusting along the way, people tend to avoid, delay, procrastinate, wait until it feels right or it is the quote unquote right time. And that keeps people stuck in that gap or falling in there. And then there may be environmental factors, real life disruptions. We don't live in a vacuum. We have work, family, stress, schedule changes, shit going on in the world endlessly. So even if your plan works on paper, it may break when life shows up in the way that it can tend to show up. And if you don't have a way to respond to that, you're going to fall back into that gap again. So let's talk about discipline and the truth about discipline. I've done pretty sure a whole episode on motivation and discipline. And this is worth mentioning here because this is the word that tends to come up over and over and over again. And discipline does matter, just not in the way that people think here. I've explained before, and I'll explain again, that discipline is deeply intertwined with motivation. If people want to use it in a way that really, really supports them. Most people think I just need more discipline so I can finally follow through. But what's often missing is not discipline. It's that they haven't built ways to access and sustain deeper, more intrinsic motivation. Because motivation and that deeper, more intrinsic motivation is not just hype or feelings or the quick bursts of energy or that excitedness. It's also driven by, I would say, also and even more so driven by values and identity and meaning and purpose and ownership. And when those aren't clear or connected to your actions or intentions, everything is going to feel harder to follow through on. And the other thing here is that you can't be disciplined in a system that doesn't support you. So if your plan doesn't fit your life or doesn't account for stress or you being a real freaking human being, it doesn't allow for flexibility, it feels heavy, then no amount of discipline is going to fix that. Real discipline in these type of situations looks like showing up imperfectly, adjusting when things don't go as planned, continuing instead of quitting. And that becomes a lot more sustainable when your actions actually matter to you, your plan fits your life, your system supports follow through. So that I could make a really bad pun here where that bridges the gap to me talking about what actually bridges the gap. I did it. I did it. Um, so if you want to actually follow through, then we need to shift from how do I try harder to what's missing that would make this easier to follow through on. So here's what actually helps. You have to make the next step pretty freaking obvious. Not just, I'm going to eat better, but like, what does better mean? Does that mean having protein with each meal? Does it mean veggies with dinner? Does it mean having fruit as a snack? And that's not even as specific as you could get. So get very specific. look at, hey, what exactly am I going to be eating today or in these specific meals? What's already prepped? What groceries do I need to get? What do I need to make? Clarity reduces friction. So get really, really clear on what your next steps are and what the steps ahead are. Build in flexibility. So instead of I missed my workout, I'll start over Monday, cliche, but happens all the time. Shifting to what's my next available opportunity to move. So this may be looking at your calendar, which I'm going to talk about soon, and actually scheduling it in instead of being like, "Hi, we'll just do it later," or start over or whatnot, or I'll figure it out. Actually scheduling it in and thinking about, you know what, like, I missed my workout. What else can I do today? And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail soon. But this is where people learn to pivot instead of quit. This is flexibility. Again, I have a whole episode on this and it's worth a listen to. This it greatly, greatly helps people in every single area of their life. If then or when then planning. So instead of hoping things go well, that's great. Hope is great here. Hope is great in general. And we don't want to just hope things go well. We want to plan for them and we want to plan for when they don't even. So if I don't make it to the gym, then I'll do a shorter workout at home. When I finish work, then I go straight to the gym. So this removes decision making in the moment because when you're in it, making decisions is freaking hard and your brain is likely going to choose familiar and comfortable. So put these things into play ahead of time and also use these things to help yourself kind of future problem solve based on what your life may look like or patterns or things that you could kind of predict. If that meeting goes longer, if something comes up, then I'm going to do this. Use if then or when then planning to help actually plan. Use your calendar. Make it real. And I will say this is a lot of people use our calendar and then don't look at it later. That can't happen. Like use your actual calendar and look at it. Create a plan. I usually tell people look at it the night before. Just, take a minute and look at what your next day actually looks like so you can get your head kind of wrapped around it, make any adjustments you need ahead of time. And stop trying to keep plans in your head if that's something that you are doing. Again, look at your actual week. Maybe on Sunday, you look at what your actual week ahead looks like. Where do you actually have time? Where are you committed? Where might you be over committed? What things are priorities? What things are non negotiables? What is actually happening in that week? And then you can schedule workouts like appointments, block time off for meals or prep, or do these things in advance. Something I highly suggest. Hey, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I work out and it's at this time. And then you can schedule other things around it when they come up. Again, always practice flexibility if you need to adjust. This can make follow through way easier to do as well. And this is where intention turns into something that you actually follow through on because it fits into what your life actually looks like. I really like to I just did an last episode on food tracking. I love to use food tracking as a planning tool, especially if people have things like health goals or body composition goals, not just tracking to track, not just tracking after the fact, but use it to help plan ahead. Log meals in advance. If you want to hit your protein, log protein in ahead of time. This can make the decisions. You make the decisions ahead of time, so then you can just go into the day and execute. It actually can help you in what groceries you're going to buy. It actually can help you in, hey, what foods are you going to prep? And of course, you can always adjust, if the day changes, whatnot, adjust before the day gets chaotic. That's already taken care of. This shifts you from reactive to intentional, and it takes away a lot of decisions so that the limited decisions that you have and maybe limited energy or capacity that you may have on busier days or days when shit happens, you can actually put into other things and know that you're taken care of in these areas. It's already laid out. You just got to look and do it. Progress tracking so that you can actually adjust. Most people quit or fall off because they feel like it's not working, but they're not actually measuring anything. So, that this is why oftentimes people track things like the workouts that they actually completed, their steps, their protein intake, their the days that they completed their hydration goals. So instead of guessing, you can actually adjust. You can actually see what's getting done. You can emphasize what you want to push into and then dig even deeper into how to make these things happen. And also, as you are tracking progress, don't compare it to perfect. Think about where you were, think about what's going on in life, and go at it that way. It's so much better. Expect resistance and build alternatives. You are not always going to feel that, super high level of motivation. You're not always going to feel confident. You're not always going to feel excited. And that's not a problem. It's very fucking human. So when things feel inconvenient or the original plan doesn't work or you're just, being a human, then you can ask what would still align with who I want to be right now. It may be adjusting to things like a shorter workout or a different meal option or a walk instead of nothing. And this is where you again learn to pivot instead of quit. But this is also where you can build skills like resilience and self trust and create the pathways of follow through where you go to the gym when you don't necessarily feel like working out. This happens to me on a weekly basis, I'll tell you, as someone who consistently follows through with the gym. I often don't feel like going. And I think about I think about what aligns with who I want to be and my values, which I'm going to jump into for a minute. And then I tell myself, you know what, go and start. And if you feel like shit, if it feels worse, then you can pivot. But if you feel, pretty okay or feels even slightly better, then you're going to keep going. And this is also how you can kind of navigate resistance when it pops up. Leaning into values and ownership. So, this is where that more intrinsic, deeper motivation also gets built, and you don't think about just, I need to do it. So, instead of just asking, what should I do? Ask, who do I want to be? And what does that person do here? If you haven't identified values, do that. And then when things don't go as planned, instead of I fucked up, it's what didn't work? What will I do differently next time? Take ownership here too. It's not because of something else or somebody else. Really put yourself into that position of power and own your shit in there. Take responsibility. That may feel uncomfortable, and it is empowering if you allow it to be. But when I'd say especially things feel inconvenient or hard, or what I just talked about with resistance being there. You get home at the end of a very busy, maybe higher stress day, and you have dinner kind of already planned, but you're feeling tired and you're craving pizza. It's like, hey, I really want to order pizza and I don't really want the dinner that I have planned. And also, my values are confidence and health and integrity, for example. So, which of those options aligns with those values? It makes it a lot harder to not follow through with the thing that aligns and is supportive. And then, of course, like when you're learning things, apply it. Don't just create the awareness, apply it because awareness without action doesn't bridge that gap. So, if you've been telling yourself, I just need to be more disciplined or get my shit together, any of those things that I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, I'm really going to encourage you to pause and ask yourself what's actually missing here, because you likely need better tools, clearer direction, more supportive expectations, something that was in this episode. And that's how you become someone who follows through. It's not by just being more disciplined or just doing it or whatever that is. And I'm going to tell you that you don't have a follow through problem. There's just a gap, and gaps can be filled. And it doesn't happen by forcing it, but by building a system that makes follow through possible. So, as always, cool shit happens on the other side of doing. Apply at least one thing that you learned in this episode, put it into action in this next week, and then keep going. And if this is something that maybe continually comes up for you, then it may be worthwhile scheduling a call, doing a little consultation, and working with someone else on this. Because as I always say, doing it alone doesn't necessarily make it better, or some kind of variation of that. All right, my friends, I hope that you have a week ahead of doing cool shit, and I will catch you next time.